Hi, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. I'm really happy to introduce both Tobias and me. We'll go with a straight bit of introduction and then really quickly dig deep into the subject that you've all come here today to talk about, ChatGPT, which obviously has a lot of resonance right now across many communities, and to discover what business use cases we have for the current and the future that we're looking at. So pleasure to meet you all. Pleasure to introduce also Tobias. My name is Theo. I am the country manager for Data Scientist Germany. But I'm happy to introduce everyone to this topic here today, and I'll let Tobias go into his subject, his expertise, and introduce himself as well.
Yes, thank you so much, Theo. It's great to be here. Hello, everyone. Really excited for this webinar here with data scientist and talking about ChatGPT for business, especially. So, yeah, really excited for that. And before we kick off and dive into the details, I'll just want to give you a brief overview about myself, little bit of background. So yeah, I'm Tobias. I'm based in Germany. I'm here the managing partner of Rapid AI, which is a company that helps businesses implement and adopt AI solutions faster. I'm also a data science mentor for Springboard, so I help people to break into data science or develop their data science career. Yeah, I've worked quite a bit in the corporate world before, so I have some experience here as well. And I've recently published a book called AI Powered Business Intelligence, which is essentially all about how you can use AI in the realms of dashboards, reports, and especially Power BI here in that case. And actually, large language models also play a role here, but I don't want to spoil too much at this place. So just for you, if you want to reach out, please feel free to connect or reach out via LinkedIn, for example. I'm also on Twitter, so whatever you prefer, feel free to reach out. And yeah, looking forward to connect and also to this discussion here. So we will I'll be talking probably for like 30 minutes or so on use cases around ChatGPT. But whenever you feel like you have a question, please just drop that into the chat, or we can answer that after this short slide session here. So that would be really cool if we can have this discussion around that and have some Q&A going on. Okay, and with that said, I would say first things first, and that is what is ChatGPT. And honestly, when I was preparing for this talk, I thought maybe I should give you some background, what ChatGPT is, how it was trained, and provide all the technical details. But then I was like, no, you probably know that, all right. And if you don't know that, then probably this is not the right talk for that. So I just decided to give you a very brief overview of what ChatGPT is, right? You've probably all heard of that, and I think there are really three key concepts or really three key things to remember about ChatGPT. The first one, obviously, it's a large language model, and LLM trained on a lot of public data. So it's a very large model. It's an open domain chatbot, right? You can ask it anything. It doesn't really have any boundaries or so. It's open domain. You can ask it any question. It will definitely answer something, right? And the new thing I would say about ChatGPT is that it can handle context, right? So you can interact with ChatGPT in that conversational style where you ask a question, you get an answer back, and then you refer back to that answer, and you have this conversation going back and forth. And this was kind of a new thing when ChatGPT was introduced before, or in comparison to the OpenAI APIs before, they weren't quite able to handle this kind of like smooth natural language flow as ChatGPT is doing that. And I think this is also part of the huge success, right? Because now suddenly a lot of people can interact with it, and it feels so real. And I think this is a good part of why this model has become so successful. And at the same time, I think we have to also speak about the two, I would say, most important limitations that we see with ChatGPT and honestly with any other large language model as well. And this is at first, right, it only knows events or facts that happened before the event of the training, or that were part of the training data. And in case of ChatGPT, this was 2021. So everything that happens afterwards, right, it doesn't know. So be careful about that, right? When you try to get facts out of ChatGPT, which it really can't not know, right? If you get facts that are, beyond 2021, right? For example, that Elon Musk bought Twitter or so, then probably that's just as I say here, a hallucination, right? Where ChatGPT takes information from some context, right? Or maybe it takes a question that you asked it and then reformulates that and gives it back to you. And it hallucinates in these setups or in these scenarios, and it gives you occasionally wrong answers. And that's very, very important to consider, and very, very important to just acknowledge for the time being, because it puts some boundaries on what we can use this tool for. But still, I think it is super useful and super helpful, and we can use it in a ton of different aspects and also in a ton of different business scenarios. And that's what I would like to talk about, now, about the experience that I have made with ChatGPT. I'm using it daily at this point, and really also have seen some really great use cases. So I really want to talk about them a little bit more here. And before we get started into the actual use cases, if you just remember one thing from this whole session today, then I would like you to remember just this one slide here. Because everyone who talks about, Chat GPT for business has like different ideas in minds, right? Or different ideas that, they are brainstorming or that could be feasible with Chat GPT. And I often feel that these kind of use cases get a little bit mixed up. So I would like to suggest to kind of structure the use cases that you can do with ChatGPT in these, I would say, kind of like 4 quadrants here. And it's actually pretty simple, right? So there are 2 dimensions. The first dimension, if you look on the horizontal line, that is the time dimension. There are definitely things that you can do with ChatGPT or with any other large language model right now. I mean, immediately you can go out and do this. And there are other things that which you can only do maybe in the near future ahead. And why is that? Especially for ChatGPT, we are currently still facing some limitations that we have to talk about. For example, I mean, it's like everyone's using it, and a lot of people are benefiting from it, but it's still research preview, right? So it's not an official product. It does not even have an API. I know there are some, I would say, kind of hacks or other, sometimes a bit shady approaches around that, where people try to, get like the ChatGPT output and put that into an API. But in the end, that's often just kind of like trying to, scrape the web framework that comes around that. And there's no official API yet, which kind of like, rules ChatGPT out for a lot of use cases right now. But make no mistake, the moment that this API hits the markets and is available publicly, there will be a ton of things going on and a ton of use cases and businesses that have just like, that they were just in the ideation phase will then start. Also, we don't have any pricing yet, and I put a question mark here because I know that OpenAI has rolled out some test customers, I would say. So there have been reports that users are signing up for ChatGPT. I think it's called Pro or so, for $42 a month. But that's not an official pricing yet, right? As it seems right now, they are testing this price and they're testing this product, and it's not like widely available to everyone, but just to some people. So let's see, what the actual price will look like in the end. And then the last point here is that so far there's no fine tuning, which also kind of like disqualifies ChatGPT for a lot of use cases that you could do right now. But make no mistake, once you have the API, once you have the fine tuning capabilities, then you can immediately start with some things. So this is the horizontal, dimension here. So the time dimension. You can do things now, and you can do some things soon. And then the other one here on the vertical axis is that I think we should consider ChatGPT in 2 aspects. The first aspect is that you can totally launch a separate business or a new business only built on large language models or ChatGPT. So when people talk about using ChatGPT for business, some people think, hey, I want to start a business. I want to build something. I want to build something new, right? And that's totally legit. There are use cases for that. But then there are other people as well who don't want to like launch a new business, but who just want to improve like what they are currently doing with ChatGPT, right? So they want to use ChatGPT in their current job. And if you combine that with the time aspect, then you end up having these four quadrants here, right? You have start a business with ChatGPT now. You have start a business with ChatGPT soon. Use ChatGPT in your current job now, or use ChatGPT in your current job soon. And what I'm going to do now is to give you examples for each of those quadrants of what you could do and how that could look like. Also, go through some pros and cons of those different ideas and approaches. But this won't be a big prompt show, right? It's sometimes, what I call prompt porn. So I'm not going to show you like hundreds or thousands of different prompt examples. I'll show you some examples of how to write good prompts. But just be aware that at the end of this seminar, I'll share a resource where you can find a library of, more prompts than you can ever cover. So in the end, there will be a lot of prompts also for you to dig into. But right now, I would like to really keep that on an ideation level and see, give you some inspiration of what you could do. Okay, so with that said, let's dive in. What can we do in order to start a business with ChatGPT now? And honestly, the most straightforward thing you can do right now if you want to just earn money from ChatGPT or any other large language model, then it's this one here. It's to build an agency business or to launch an agency business. How does that work? So in this case, you can just consider ChatGPT or any other LLM for that sake as a free or maybe cheap coworker, right? For example, you can use this technology to, offer all kinds of services that traditional agencies are also offering, but you can offer them at a much more competitive scale. For example, you can produce things much cheaper. You can really push the boundaries when it comes to time of delivery. So you can deliver things much faster, or you can deliver things in a much higher quality, right? And that's what we call the leverage of the arbitrage effect. And this only means that, there are essentially some companies or agencies that know ChatGPT exists, right? And you count to that exclusive kind of people. And then there are other people who just don't know, right? So sometimes we have the impression that everyone knows about ChatGPT, but no, right? It's gaining more traction also in mass media, but like a lot of people just they are not aware of that. And so you can use this arbitrage effect in order to, build your own agency. And I mean, the typical examples here are, for example, are agencies around Google Ads, copywriting agencies, SEO agencies. So anything really where you create text output and where you can really leverage the capabilities of ChatGPT in order to produce them either faster, at a higher scale, or at a fraction of the cost that is typically applied here in this segment. And the pros of this approach, of course, is it's a proven business and method, right? So I mean, people are doing this since the early days of GPT-3. So people are earning 5, sometimes even 6-figure revenues per month just with an agency business built around GPT-3. And this is totally doable also with ChatGPT. It's very easy to start, and it's very, very lucrative and especially well suited if you have a niche industry or a niche industry. So what do I mean with that? Let's say you work for, I don't know, pharmaceuticals or for the automotive industry or for agriculture. So let's say you have a competitive edge above like all the other agencies around there. So you have any like deep knowledge about a certain industry, then you can take this knowledge and pair it up with the copywriting or SEO or ad headline generation capabilities of ChatGPT, and then just focus on target this industry. And this will give you a highly competitive advantage over other players in the field. And of course, the like on the disadvantages side here is that this business model, of course, is it's easy to copy, and this arbitrage effect will diminish over time, right? So the longer you wait, the more people will pick this up, and the more people will use that tool, and your kind of like competitive advantage might fade away over time. So, but if you want to start with something, that's probably the easiest thing to just go ahead and start. And with that, let's take a look at the second example. And this is besides launching an agency business, I would say the first option I would choose if I don't want to launch an agency business, but if I want to build something digital, and this is to launch an affiliate website. So just to give you an idea, what is an affiliate website? An affiliate website is essentially a website where you acquire traffic from whatever source. It can be paid advertisement, can be word of mouth marketing, but in most cases it's really SEO, right? So you get traffic for people looking for, I don't know, certain kind of auto parts or motorcycle parts on Google. And then instead of landing on Amazon, they land on your website because your website has high quality content tailored around this set of keywords, and this content gets people's attention and drives them into your website. And then you offer some products on your website, which you don't sell these products by yourself, but you just provide a link for those products to another marketplace, and like most cases that's Amazon, and you will get a commission for every item that you sell then on Amazon, for every item that is being sold on Amazon. So that's the affiliate business model. And how does ChatGPT play here? And ChatGPT essentially helps you to generate high quality SEO content, but be aware it still needs human editing. So I'm not an advocate of saying, hey, just generate a bunch of content, put that online, and hope that you get traffic on that. That probably does not work. But what you can do is really use its capabilities in order to create a lot of high value content, which you can then still edit and tweak according to your niche, and create more content in less time compared to other players in the market who are not using ChatGPT. And the added value that you would need to pick for this kind of business model is that, as previously, you would need to pick a niche, right? You would need to tailor this to the right audience. You would need to be creative, right? So, for example, one thing could be that you say, hey, you want to compare. I'm showing this right now on the next slide, how that could look like. Let's say you are running an affiliate website for headphones, right? And you're comparing headphones. So what you could do is you could go to Amazon, scrape all the reviews from headphones. Then you could take those reviews, put them into ChatGPT, and ask ChatGPT, what are the most important benefits or disadvantages for product X, Y, Z. Take the output, structure that in a nice way, and put that on your website. And within probably, I don't know, 1 or 2 hours of work, you have kind of amassed thousands of reviews, compressed them into one single paragraph or some few bullet points. And this is really, really valuable for your audience. So you could put that on your website, and that would probably be really valuable for your users. So that's one example. And the pros here on this is that's really easy to launch. It's really easy to validate. There's almost no associated cost involved. You just need to spin up a WordPress website, populate content, acquire a domain, and then invest your own time into that. Build up some links, maybe build up the content, build up this whole system and setup. But it's really, you can do that without any monetary or budget investment if you do it by yourself. And of course, it's very easy to scale, and honestly, it has a really, really high income potential. So I know because I have been in this space also myself. I have 3 affiliate websites as a kind of a side hustle, started I think 10 years back or so. So this can really have a high impact, and also lead to a passive income over time. So don't underestimate this niche. So on the cons, of course, it would be hard to build, for high competitive niches. For example, the headphone example that I just mentioned, right? There are already, I don't know, a dozen or hundreds of affiliate websites out there. And also AI generated content might be flagged by Google. And the last one here is really critical because right now it's very hard even for Google to really recognize what is AI generated content, and it's very hard to figure it out. But I mean, we just have to acknowledge that the web will be flooded with AI generated content. No matter if we do that, other people will be doing that. So Google needs to kind of keep up and kind of identify what is AI generated and what is really valuable content. But the way I think about it is that in the end, you should not worry too much if this content is AI generated or not, but it needs to provide value and it needs to be unique for your specific audience, right? And this kind of like value add always comes when you do something that is not in the training data, that cannot be produced by ChatGPT, that is not out there already. So this is added value. And so always kind of like, be creative of what could be this added value here. And then I think, you're in a good position also to use ChatGPT for producing high value content. And just to give you like two examples, how like typical affiliate websites look like. So just you can picture that from the first here, that's a affiliate store for a specific motorcycle. So it's really just a store or a website for this Hawk 250 RPS motorcycle. I don't know this one, right? So I don't know what this is all about. The only thing I know is that some guy sat down and said, hey, this Hawk 250 is so popular, right? And it has a community around it. So I'm sitting down, I'm producing content around that. And what's essentially, what they are doing here is like setting up this website, building a ton of products around that, spare parts, or how-to guides, how to repair this motorcycle. I don't know, right? All these different things, put that all together and create a nice niche website over here. And the right one here on this page, it's unfortunately in German, but I think you get the idea. And so the translation would be headphones.com, and it's a very, very easy setup. And this kind of setup is out there, like I don't know, in hundreds or thousands of different variations. So essentially, you take products from Amazon, you write your own reviews, or as I said, right, you do some kind of like meta review thing where you take reviews from other platforms and you put content all around that, and then you just on top of that, you provide like how-to guides, right? How to find the best headphone for X, Y, Z, and you go like more and more niche. And this is where ChatGPT really, really helps you out, because it can kind of like make all those suggestions for you. It can say, hey, there are headphones for noise canceling, there are headphones in ear, there are like on ear, there are headphones like that are like kind of like connected to your bone. I don't know what, right? But these kind of contents are really, it's really easy to build with ChatGPT. And if you do that correct and if you execute it really well, I think this really has a high income potential. So that's number two, launch an affiliate website.
There's a little question for you,
Yeah.
Tobias, from Saden that asks, how would you send all the scrapped reviews to ChatGPT to condensate them? Because it may be a huge file. So I'm not sure
Yeah.
if you.
So one option would be to just take that piece by piece, right? So you just take, for example, all the reviews of the last 90 days, for example, and say put them first, or you take all the positive reviews of the last 90 days and then just paste them in the prompt, because right now there is no API. But what you have is there's a ton of services out there that are actually providing you with this data, so you don't actually need to scrape that by yourself, right? You can go to any of those platforms or services and just enter your product number and then get the reviews back from that as a flat file or a JSON object or a CSV file, and then you can just paste them in there. So you should probably be able to get a good bunch of reviews within one prompt, at least a couple of hundreds, which is like enough to start with. So you don't need to really collect like thousands of reviews. And the thing is, for the products that you're looking at, for those very niche products, you very often don't have that many reviews. So you don't have like I don't know, 5,000 or 6,000 reviews for a specific product, but probably you only have maybe 30, 40, maybe hundreds of reviews. And this should be really easy to copy within the prompt area of ChatGPT. So I hope that answers the question. So that's how I would do it. And again, you can also always split it up, right? And say, hey, this is the first chunk of reviews. It's the next chunk. Just be aware. I think there's this like 3,000 word limit of the context that ChatGPT can memorize. So yeah, but that would be the way to go. Next one, and that would be the last one here of this category, and then we move on to the next one, is to launch a consulting business, right? And I don't want to dive too deep here into that one. It's pretty obvious, actually. ChatGPT has generated a huge hype, right? Like 1 million users in 5 days, something like that. Mass media is just picking it up, but there is a huge demand in education around that topic. I mean, we're hosting webinar today, right? And there's so much content out there for people who want to know what is that, how can I use that, etc. And the only thing right now, I think, is that it's probably not a good idea to really launch a course. At least I would not launch a course right now, because things are developing so fast and so quickly. So chances are really high that, once you publish the course, or the ebook or whatever, Amazon Kindle is flooded with ChatGPT ebooks, right, about ChatGPT. But I think those will be really outdated really fast. So I'm not sure if if this is a good time investment. But what you can always do in any time is, to provide consulting, right? To have seminars, to have, like, talk to people, to provide coaching, right? And just imagine that, once you are a daily active ChatGPT user by yourself, and you have experience, you have, like, amassed all the resources around that, you probably know much more than, I don't know, 40, 50, 60% of the population out there. So you have that, like, of skill or knowledge gap, even if you're not, like, the world's top ChatGPT expert. I mean, who is, right? But you still have more knowledge than, other people, compared to, who have never signed up to ChatGPT, right? Who have no idea what that thing is, who maybe just pick that up from the news, but who want to talk about that. So yeah, and another good benefit about that is that you have direct access to clients, right? And you can use that even beyond ChatGPT, right? You could scale it up and say, hey, you're consulting around large language models, and then you start saying, hey, there are also, like, services generating images for you, or videos, right? So you can try to play that story. So if you want to end up in a consulting business, then it's a good it's a good place to start with, definitely, because the demand is there and people are aware of that. And yeah, on the contra side here, it's, of course, there's a high competition, right? So a lot of people are trying that right now. But if you have a good network, for example, or if you have a good niche, right, you can totally go for that. So again, I think the big theme here is, like, pick a niche and try to adapt, all those things within your niche. So, okay, and with that, some outlooks on, what you could do with ChatGPT soon, in order to start a business. Once you have the API, once you can fine tune, once you can all those fancy things. And one of the most obvious thing here, of course, is to build a custom chatbot business, right? I mean, like, chatbots have been around for years. Enterprises are spending a lot of money on chatbots for virtual support agents, for, anything, essentially, for trying to convert leads or pre-qualified leads. And I mean, what ChatGPT is really doing really, really well is, to have this conversational interaction and conversational flow, and it's much superior to any chatbot that I've seen before. So, and time will tell if you are really able to kind of, like, fine tune ChatGPT in a way that it really works well on your specific data set and answers questions which are really related to your knowledge base or FAQ section or whatever. So time will tell if that works. But once the API is out and once you can fine tune it, you should definitely try and go and see if you can fine tune it on a, certain, I don't know, support documents or whatever you can, find out there. And once you have that methodology of taking, okay, like, there's a public content source over there, like a public knowledge base of company X or whatever, you could go there, take this content, build the chatbot, and sell that to that business, and say, hey, here's a great chatbot. You can just include that on your website, right? So users can interact with that. Just be aware, like, in the end, it will always be an open domain chatbot, and sometimes it might go crazy. So not everyone likes that when you can ask your virtual support agent any question, right, and it will answer to that question. So most support agents that we see right now in that space are closed domain. That means they can only answer a limited set of questions, and this is intentional, right? Because, like, especially if you're a large corporation, you don't want to have your virtual chatbot talking about politics or anything like that, right? So you want to stay out of that. But yeah, it's definitely a good use case to have in mind, once you get the API. And then the second one here, and I think this is the biggest opportunity for for the near future when there is the API, is to build an application layer around that. Because I think now, especially with Microsoft entering, like, the ChatGPT or investing more money into OpenAI, I think there is no interest of OpenAI to build something like an application layer around that. I think, by building this kind of, like, chat interface, they kind of, like, left the original scope a little bit, because before that, I mean, they had the playground and they had the APIs, but now they really suddenly realized, oh, we build a product here. But I still think, that's not one of their core business. Like, their core business could be to sell those APIs. And then you have companies, for example, like Microsoft, who are building the application layer and then integrating these APIs APIs into PowerPoint, Microsoft Excel, and whatnot. So that means, right, there will always be a good opportunity to build an application layer around all those APIs. And on the pros side here, it's a proven business model. I mean, we have seen Jasper AI, we have seen Copy AI, etc. Right? And these things have all been built around existing APIs, and it's very easy to build and it's very easy to scale. And at the same time, of course, it's also there's ultra high competition. So once the API hits the market, there will be literally hundreds of companies trying to do the same thing, right? And in the end, there's only one question: who is the fastest? So, if you're fast and if you want to go for that race, then, feel free to do that. But again, like, there's a very low competitive advantage if you're just like building like knobs and buttons around like an existing API, right? But there have been examples in the past who did, even more than that. For example, I mean, if you look at Copy AI, it started very simple with, that wrapper around the GPT-3 API. But now Copy AI has that whole kind of like integrated Google Docs style experience where you have like, different features integrated. So it grew from there. Or this other tool, which I found here, it's called Debuild, which helps you to essentially build real apps from text, right? We all know of the code generation capabilities that GPT-3 has. And this tool, for example, allows you to like, take this code and then also like execute it and run it somewhere, right? So it's kind of like a text to code software. And the only thing I want to show you with that is that you can go that extra mile. It's not only about presenting text as an output. You can also take this text as an intermediary step and then build something from that text, right? There are services who let you query databases using text prompts because they have a SQL query and then, in the middle generated, or in this case, having this code written here and then, being deployed right away as an app, for example. So this is just to trigger some ideas, of what an application layer could be. It could be really shallow, just build a wrapper, some knobs and buttons. In the end, you get a customized prompt, which the user will never see. And, you just display the result to the user. That's fine. It could work, especially if you have an existing audience or if you have an existing customer base, which you can just target and then, just promote this product to them. That could really work well. Or if you want to go this extra mile, you could think, okay, I get text output as a result, but what should I do with that text output? Maybe not showing it directly to the user, but maybe you can do something with it. For example, in this case here, build an app. So this is like the future use cases that you could build when you want to launch your own business on ChatGPT. And with that, I would like to enter now this space, which is probably the most crowded or the most condensed around ChatGPT use cases. And this is how you can use ChatGPT in your current job or in your current position right now. And by far the most popular and the most universal, and honestly, the thing that I use ChatGPT all the time for is to use it as an ideation or creative tool. And I mean, this is really kind of stunning because we all thought that this AI revolution will start by taking all the repetitive and tedious work from us, and maybe only conquer creative parts at the very end. But hey, we started from the back, right? So now we're starting with the creative part first. And it's really, really working really well for that. So you can use ChatGPT to make suggestions for any creative content, right? You can write presentation outlines, you can write email replies, you can write business proposals, sales scripts, etc. And I'm not saying that the output is always like 100% and you can just copy paste it and go forward and use that, but it gives you an idea, and it increases your productivity really at an like absurd scale. So it makes things so much easier, and you don't have to stare at a blank page anymore. That's what it's all about. And honestly, I don't really see a reason why you should not do that, right? So it's kind of like really easy to get started. It's easy to use. It's free to use. Of course, you need to know how to use it, and like you need to know kind of like what prompts to use and stuff. But even that knowledge is out there free of charge. And for example, I have like one example here from a ebook which is called the Product Manager's Prompt Book, which is a really, really great resource. It's available free of charge on Gumroad. At the end, I'll share a link with you, which provides the access to all those resources here. And there's a example here, for example, of a prompt which says, create a dynamic quarterly product strategy meeting agenda using Gibson's build suggested approach. It's the first of its kind at the company, and we want to emphasize getting alignment of the product strategy and clarity of direction, right? So that's the prompt. And on the left side here, that's the output, right? It says, okay, we have welcome introduction of 5 minutes, review of the product strategy, 20 minutes, alignment on product direction, 30 minutes, breakout sessions, 45, recap and next steps. And it also gives you like indications of what could be the agenda points below that. And I mean, it's really a nice and clearly structured agenda, right? And the good thing is because it's so clearly structured, you can easily dive deeper and start adding more points and asking it more questions and saying, hey, on the point of alignment on product direction, like what more or what other points could we discuss here? Or you could ask questions like, why do you think should we include that, right? And get this idea. So you're at this ideation phase where you can really, use ChatGPT as your sparring partner in order to come up with those documents. And this is really, really valuable because if we consider the fact that in our like modern world, most of the work that we do is kind of like knowledge work, right? Where we have some information, we try to gather that and reorganize that and then put that somewhere and send that somewhere else, right? So we all kind of like in this like information work where we like share things, right? This is like super helpful because this is, I don't know, 70, sometimes maybe 90% of your like, everyday work to do things like that. Even in technical roles, right? For example, here's another example where it says, write a user story including acceptance criteria using best modern practice for a checkout in an e-commerce app, right? And what it does, it goes ahead and provides a user story. So I'm not saying that you should go ahead and, copy paste this user story here in Jira, but what you could do is to just take that as a first suggestion and review it. And I think that's much easier compared to like, staring at a blank page and thinking, okay, what should the user flow be, right? So you're more in this kind of like iteration mode where you think, okay, like, yeah, that's actually a good idea. Or, okay, no, I don't want to have it that way, right? So I think it's good to iterate with that in that way. So that's, using ChatGPT as an ideation tool. The next one, obviously, is to use ChatGPT as a coding tool. And, the biggest, mistake I always see about it is that people think, oh, that's just for programmers, right? That's just for IT nerds. I don't have anything to do with that. But then I'm saying, hey, do you use Microsoft Excel? Right? And everyone's like, yeah, but why? Yeah, of course, you can write complex formulas with ChatGPT, right? You can just say, I have column A and B and I want to multiply them or do this or that. And you get an Excel formula as a result, right? And there's so many people really struggling, to write Excel formulas. It's really, it can be super helpful. And like if Excel is too easy for you, right, you can go one step ahead and write SQL queries. I'll explain in a bit how that can work out. Just be aware that the code that is being generated is not always correct. As I said before, these tools are hallucinating, they are making up wrong answers. But the good thing is, especially if you work with Excel, for example, it's really easy to validate, if the formula is doing what you want it to do, right? Because you can just check it for one row, for example, and see if the calculations are correct. And if it's correct for this one row, it will be correct for the other ones as well. So you can, it's really easy to kind of like double check the output and see if it's working. So yeah, that's on the contra side here that this plays. And yeah, one example I wanted to share with you regarding creating SQL code and that's actually something I'm sharing today in my newsletter. So feel free to sign up for that. There will be a detailed breakdown of how to do that. But a lot of people think they can't use ChatGPT, to query, to work with data or to data analysis because they are afraid of sending their data to ChatGPT. But the thing is, you don't need to send any data to ChatGPT, right? The thing how this works is that you essentially provide your database schema to ChatGPT. For example, in this case, you say, hey, I have a database schema. It has 3 tables. This is the foreign, this is the primary key. And by the way, you can copy paste that from your relational database management system. So you have like, your big overview where, your tables are stored and how they are organized. And then you can provide this to ChatGPT and say, hey, now that's the context, right? That's how my data looks like, right? You haven't shared any data. You have just shared how this data is organized and structured. And then you can go ahead and say, for example, as I did here, what's the percentage increase of products sold per day compared to the previous day? Return the SQL statement, which is actually a really complicated SQL statement because that's a window function. It's applying row-wise calculations. So you have this kind of lagging function where you compare one row to a previous row. So it's quite complex. And in this case, ChatGPT is like offering the correct solution. You can just go ahead and copy that code, paste it, and get the right output. So just that's one idea how to think about like using ChatGPT for even more advanced data analysis tasks. And again, I'm not I'm not touching even the area here of writing complete code, right, or helping you to write code. But I'm sure a lot of you have heard about that that you can use ChatGPT also for code completion or generating, code. Okay, the third one I want to highlight in this category before we move on to the next one is to use ChatGPT as a tool for preparing yourself for interviews. And I'm not talking about like job interviews. That can be any discussion or any conversation that you have with another person. It could be a discussion that you have for a salary increase, for conflict resolution, for contract negotiation, whatever. And how does that work? Essentially, it works in a way that you tell ChatGPT to act like a certain persona. For example, in this case, as an interviewer, I'm showing you an example right now, right in the next slide. And then you want them to come up with questions that this persona might ask. And this will bring up new areas of question which you might never have thought about before. And it also gives potential resolution clues or, potentials of answering that question. Of course, it's no guarantee, but hey, again, like it's a suggestion, right? And you can start that. And, maybe you have one bad surprise less at the end. For example, here's one prompt which says, act as the chief marketing officer interviewing me for a marketing manager position with the company BMW. List the question you will ask to find out if I am the right fit for the role and the culture, and suggest the kinds of answers you'd be expecting, right? And the answer will be this one here, and says, as the chief marketing officer of etc., I would ask the following question. Can you tell us about your experience in the automotive industry, specifically with luxury brands, right? And so you will see, okay, maybe I have thought about the automotive industry before, but hey, we're talking about luxury brands right now, right? So maybe that could be a good, just trigger something for you to maybe explore this category also a little bit, or saying, how do you approach market research and consumer insights? And can you give an example of a campaign you developed based on your findings, right? Or how do you approach diversity and inclusion in your marketing campaigns and strategies? Like all these points are brought to you right now, and you can prepare for those questions before the interview. And of course, there's no guarantee that these questions will end up, popping up. But of course, you kind of like preparing yourself in a better way. And here in this case, it's also, there are also some suggestions of how these questions could be answered. But I would always be kind of like a little bit cautious in that regard here, because in the end, you want to answer them like how you answer them, right? And not how ChatGPT answers them, because in the end, it's a real interview interviewing you and not interviewing ChatGPT. So, and then for the last 3 slides, I want to share with you how to use ChatGPT in your current job soon. And the first one, and again, this is a little bit maybe futuristic here, but let's see what happens in the future. So I'm kind of like bullish on this whole AI development. So let's see how that turns out. So one potential is to use ChatGPT once fine-tuning becomes available, and train it on your personal communication data, and adopt your personal communication style, right? And this way, ChatGPT could perform way better to reply to emails, Slack messages, etc., in a similar way like you would reply, and sound more natural like you, right? And this could take off tedious work, especially if you say, hey, you have that link to that virtual assistant linked to certain, I don't know, Slack channels, for example, responding to something, or acting for only some, some email inboxes where you want to have that kind of like automatism involved or whatever. But you have this possibility of having a, piece of software essentially behaving like you or speaking your language up to a certain degree. Of course, on the contra side here is that it has to be trained on personal data. So I probably, as I myself, I would not like, to send all my, previous emails also to ChatGPT and just train or fine tune the model on that. But it's in the end up to you, at least if you exclude all the other third party personal data from that as well. And the second one would be to build a personal knowledge base. So, for example, imagine a lot of people are meanwhile collecting their whole life in tools like Notion, right? Or Apple To Do List or Evernote, whatever. So, they're kind of like building this vast knowledge library. I have all my notes in Apple Notes, and, I have probably 5,000 notes in there. So, I don't know. But it would be really practical to have some kind of tool that just takes all that knowledge, right, and acts like a personal knowledge assistant, where you just go and say, hey, how should I, what should I do in this scenario? Or did I, did I solve, something like this early before? Or, did I find some article related to XYZ, right? So it could be like a search function on steroids, how so to say. So something that really helps you to organize and, organize your own thoughts and your own knowledge, and maybe also act proactively and bring some, some things up from time to time, or say, hey, here's a reminder, right? Or here, I found something in your notes that, that you wanted to have this to do finished by, I don't know, a certain date or something like that, right? Or ask that assistant and ask it for, what to do items are still unanswered or something like that, right? But having this kind of like capabilities that ChatGPT right now has, but that really tailored specifically to your personal knowledge repository. So I think that could be really a huge personal benefit. It could be like a mini assistant that you have all the time, that has all your knowledge available. But again, you would need to train that on personal data. So that could be a big of a showstopper or no-go criteria here. And yeah, and the third one here, that's the last use case I'm showing today, is to essentially use ChatGPT to build something like a first level support. And this is very similar to the first one, but then the big difference is that you're not training that on your own documents, right, in your own communication style, but you're using your company's knowledge base or company's documents in order to, for example, just take some of the work that you would normally do as, for example, a support agent, and then you just use that in order to fulfill those requirements. Could, of course, lead to higher productivity, ideally better customer satisfaction, but in the end, still open domain, and this thing might go crazy. So it's really recommended not to do that on a fully automated scale, but just use it in order to bring you suggestions, in order to come up with good answers, which you can then forward to the client, which helps you probably reply to emails not within 2 hours, but within 20 minutes. I don't know, something like that in this realm. So yeah, that's one example here how this could look like, where you say, hey, I have this, there was this thing here, for example, because something wasn't delivered on time, and you want to offer a coupon code, for example, as a compensation, and this is the email that you get. And in the future, you could create these even without going into the ChatGPT interface and copy pasting every email, right? So you could have that integrated into your email box or email software or something like that, which you're currently using. And with that, in order to keep some more minutes here for a discussion, I would like to point your attention to this URL here. It will lead you to a LinkedIn post, which I shared recently. And in this post, you will find 10 resources, which are, I think most of them are ebooks. Some of them are Notion workspaces, which you can just duplicate to your own. And if you have those resources, I think you're all set for at least the basic knowledge to get, the best out of ChatGPT. So there will be a lot of prompts. There will be a lot of just guiding criteria of how to write prompts and all these things. So, just feel free to explore that. And also, if you want to stay in touch, please feel free to reach out either via email, LinkedIn, also subscribe to my newsletter, and then we can also stay in touch via that. And otherwise, I really thank you for your attendance here, and I'm looking forward to answer any questions you might have and join a little discussion towards the end of this seminar. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tobias. That was incredibly clear and thought-provoking, to say the least. I think I'd like to start off maybe this Q&A with a question that I asked to ChatGPT. My prompt was, which question would you ask the presenter of a webinar on the topic of business use cases for ChatGPT? And here is what it came with, was actually quite an interesting question, which is, how does ChatGPT compare to other language generation models? And what advantages would you see it having for business use cases?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. So, like obviously, the first difference to other large language models is that you have this conversational style, right? So you have the context, and you can answer, and you have this conversation flow, and that's not really working that at the same quality level if you compare that to like other. Uh, um, as for example, the Da Vinci model from OpenAI. So if you want this conversational style, then it's ChatGPT. But one thing that I found really interesting is that when I try to achieve the same task with tools like, for example, Jasper or CopyAI that are built around the existing OpenAI services, and then compare that to the output of ChatGPT, for example, give me some suggestion for Google headlines or for ad keywords or whatever. Like in most cases, I really think that the ChatGPT outputs are much better. I don't know why, but it seems really to be like kind of like a next generation. I don't know if this is due to fine tuning or what. I don't know, but it really seems to, at least for me, to perform better than the APIs that they currently have out there. I know there are some other people who think for other use cases you have better results with those existing APIs, but yeah, I think it's just worth trying that out and exploring it. So yeah, that's what I would say. So you have those two aspects.
Thank you very much. I think we can go back to a question that popped up a few slides ago from Eugene, which is what conclusions can be drawn from old trends? And here he gives examples, like, for example, the development of e commerce, which had to start off lots of shops and then Amazon to centralize all of them. But another example was e marketing, which went from simple keyword spamming in the beginning to more professional players today. And I think Bitcoin also appeared in that question.
Mhm.
Um, what conclusions would you draw from these previous old trends to the ones that we're seeing now with large language models, ChatGPT, and the usage of AI generated text and or applications?
Yeah, I mean, like first thing is, the only thing which has really, proven true is that it's almost impossible to predict the future, the future trends, because almost no one had seen, ChatGPT coming. Like even OpenAI was really, blown away by that success. They wouldn't have expected it. Like if you look at the early interviews, from them, you see that they have expected, like, ChatGPT to be kind of like just another like small feature. So that completely surprised them. So honestly, I don't know what will happen. So there are a lot of also AI experts from research side who say that from now on the development will be like happen so fast, because like we have this breakthrough moment, and it will be just like everything will happen so fast from now. I don't know. Let's see. The only thing which I think you can do is just acknowledge what's currently happening and just try to stay ahead and see what's happening, because I think in the most extreme case, we could really enter into a phase where it's not only text or code generated by text. I saw a post on LinkedIn this morning, from a paper generating music from text, right? And I've read a newsletter a couple of weeks back where it says we're entering into an era where everything is entering a text era, right? So it's a text to everything era. So that's something that could happen. So I think there's really, yeah, there's really a large spectrum of things which could happen. Honestly, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, just look at the excitement around that. It's probably like with any trend adoption, there's this kind of like peak right now. A lot of people will be disappointed and say, this doesn't work for me like expected and so on, and just like kind of like drop it. But in the end, I think we will reach kind of a plateau where we will reach a higher productivity level on large magnitude for a lot of industries. So that's
And
what I think.
yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And on the same note, Jeremy asks if you think that there'll be the merging of different kinds of AI, and he gives the example of ChatGPT and Midjourney, where I think the question behind that is image generation is also something that we've seen break through in the past few even months. In the same sense that ChatGPT has wowed us over the course of 2022 and is now in 2023. And yeah, the question is, do you see some model able to do both in the relative future? And if so, do you have any idea? Especially because I believe DAL-E and ChatGPT are both from the
Mm.
OpenAI Foundation.
Yeah. So I think like one trend, I mean, and that's already happening, right? That's the trend to multimodality in AI models, which at right now means that you can train AI models on different like media types, right? Not only on text but also on images and video data. So you have different kind of data types, and feed that in as training data. And if you take that to the next level, of course, why not generate like the same things from the same model in the end? Like these are using the transformer architecture in order to generate those outputs. But the question is always like, will the performance of this model or these kind of like general models, will that be better compared to very specific like models that produce text or images or whatever? So I think right now we are still in a phase where we have this specialization, but I mean, who knows? It's really hard to predict. It could end up, having just one giant model producing all sorts of things that honestly I have no idea. So let's see how that happens.
So I think a lot of these questions are future oriented, but it makes sense because I think we're just at the beginning of what
Yeah.
GPT is capable of and what large language models can do. And one of the next question is from Julien asking, OpenAI announced that GPT-4 will have significantly more parameters. On our
Mm.
end, what additional features could we expect from that model size increase?
Yeah, so I mean, first thing is of course like the amount of parameters is a good proxy for the overall capability of a model, but it's not the only one, and it's not set in stone that only because GPT-4 will have like 10 or 100 times more parameters than GPT-3, it's like 100 times better, right? You don't know, right? Maybe it provides just like slightly better performance, and then it will probably never see the markets because it's just too expensive to run these things. So I wouldn't really draw that parallel of saying like the more parameters, the better. I think we are more entering into an era where I mean, put it into different ways. Like the large language models that we have seen right now were more or less all trained on the same data set, right? So there is this large corpus of publicly available data, right? And there's like fine tuning applied, and all different kind of things, but like it's the bulk of the thing which is like the same. And I think the next major breakthrough will be when we try to include information in there which is not publicly available. For example, think about national archives, for example. Like there's this initiative here in Germany called Liam, where we want to build a European language model where we say, hey, there's a ton of data, for example, in the European Union, which is like publicly available. For example, they are all transcripts from all parliament debates that we have over the last, I don't know how many years in Europe, in like 20 different languages. So, but that's not publicly available. You have to kind of log in and then you get there, right? But what happens if you try to model on that, for example, right? So I think that will be a big thing. And then the next thing is that at some point, there will be a situation where those models are not only behave in their training data set or training data world, but where they can access like actual real world live data. Something like a ChatGPT producing some output, putting that output into Google search, fetching the result, and doing something with it, and then providing that to you, right? So bridging the gap between like having a kind of like data source where this thing was trained on, and then access to like real data or actual more recent data. I think that could be the next wave of innovation. I think it's not so much about like the size of the parameters and the size of the model, but more of like kind of like intelligent ways of using those models. And again, like combining the training data with like actual or recent data. I think that will be yeah. I don't know what happens when we reach that level, but it will be definitely super exciting. So yeah, let's wait for that.
Yeah, no, definitely. Especially, I think it's interesting that you mentioned the European Union Parliament data, because that was one of what I think to be one of the interesting breakthroughs in AI in a couple of years ago was DeepL,
Mm,
the language translation model, and their idea and their basis was, look, you have the UN, which has to publish the same document in 50 languages. Why don't we just use that to base
yeah,
our algorithm
yeah.
upon it? And that was just the smart idea that got them to be probably better than Google Trad, which was the reference or Google Translate at the time. So yeah, I think that's really interesting, and having that
Yeah.
perspective also
I mean,
really
especially
resonates.
from a European perspective. I mean, like when it comes to languages, I mean, we should be the ones at the forefront of that, right? I mean, we have I don't know how many languages in the European Union, but yeah, again, let's see what happens, right? So the thing is really, this has been kind of like an awakened moment for a lot of people, also for
Hmm.
politics, also for business. So I really hope that we see more development in that space right now. So let's see.
And I think I just want to ask one last question before we end this webinar today, which is, well, we mentioned so business use cases for
Mhm.
ChatGPT, but I think a lot of people are interested also what businesses could be replaced simply by
Mm.
ChatGPT, which means either jobs that could be lost or just jobs that probably won't exist in the near future. What would be your intake on that, and what would you not recommend people step into right now?
Yeah, in the end, I think it's this common saying of it's not AI replacing your job; it will be a person using AI who will replace your job, and I think that's totally true. So again, I think like if you look into the future in the next couple of years, the more you work with just very commoditized and repeatable text data, which is um, easy to generate with AI, you will maybe not lose your job, but the salary for those jobs could really plummet. It could really go down significantly because you can outsource those jobs to any place in the world and just do that. For example, to give you one example, if you are a person who takes your input is you have a product description and your output is you should write a put that into a text, right? So someone can put that on text. Like there's no reason a person should really do that right now anymore, right? So you can totally do that using AI. um and yeah, so I would really be kind of like skeptical about that. But at the other on the other hand side, I would not say like don't go into copywriting because like there are those copywriting tools. I think going into copywriting right now could be a super lucrative business, right? Because there are so many people who are not using this technology, who don't know how to leverage it. So if you know how to use that, and if you go into copywriting, that could be a super lucrative business, right? So that's why I think it's not so easy of saying like all this whole copywriting industry is just going down, right? But yeah, I'll just I think you have to kind of really be aware of that these tools exist and that other people are using it as well, and then figure out what that means for your own industry.
That's perfect. All right. Thank you very much, Tobias. I think this is where we'll leave it for today. It's been a pleasure to have you on and to discuss these business use cases around ChatGPT. As Tobias mentioned, please don't hesitate to contact us to discuss with us, to bring forward the discussion with regards to either ChatGPT, or I think Tobias would be very happy to answer many AI related questions. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you very much, and have a fantastic day. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you so much. Bye bye. See you.